That's so
Hello.
nice.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. So this is an interview in the Modern Women's Health Summit. All the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking to different experts in women's health and nutrition, with the goal of this whole event really being finding ways to integrate kind of our internal needs and our external needs. You know, we have all of these external pressures of looking amazing all the time and being amazing at our jobs. And we go on Pinterest and we go on Instagram and we see all of these things that we are trying to become. And it's a lot of pressure to deal with. And on the other side, we're trying to deal with the very real, internal needs of being healthy, nourishing our bodies, connecting with what our bodies are trying to communicate and with our intuition. So we're going to be talking to a bunch of different experts about kind of ways that we can honor our internal needs. And today's interview, I'm really excited for. We are talking with Priscilla Johnson. She is a certified nutritional therapist specializing in skin health. And her passion is really to help people with acne, eczema, rosacea, and other skin problems make nutrition and lifestyle changes so that they can finally have clear skin and feel great about the way they look, which is so important. Acne was one of the things that I struggled with all through high school, all through college. If my diet slips a little bit or I'm not managing my stress, I see it on my face, even to this day. So Priscilla, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited for this one.
Thank you. I'm really excited too, Molly.
Yay. So tell us a little bit about kind of what got you interested in skin health in the first place.
Okay, well, kind of what got me interested in skin health was I suffered with persistent acne for 6 years, and all of the conventional advice I was given failed me. So it kind of came, my interest in skin health came as a result of wanting to finally have healthy, clear skin. I knew that couldn't involve putting things on my skin or inside of my body that were harsh and painful to me. So,
Sure. So you kind of dealt with this yourself, and it sounds like you tried a few different conventional methods and they just didn't work for you.
well, yeah, I was put through birth control, all these harsh topicals. The doctors just kind of like, do this, do that. And I mean, if you're in enough pain that you have to take a Tylenol because this stuff is drying out your face, that can't be helping your skin. And then you go to a dermatologist who's supposed to know everything, and he puts you on meds, and then he wants to put you on Accutane. That was the final straw. I'm like, something that harsh. And if you think that that's your absolute best advice, there was never any mention of diet. There was never any mention of anything, other factors in my life. It was just this kind of turnaround, revolving door. We'll give you this just like everybody else and hope it works thing.
Right, right. Just one medication after the other. It's kind of like throwing something at the wall to see if it sticks.
Yeah.
So what compelled you to start looking into nutrition as a way of improving your skin? Was it to improve your skin, or were you learning about that for other reasons first? Or tell us about that.
First, it was to improve my skin because I figured, okay, if Accutane was my final straw and I'm going away from conventional advice because it's failed me, there must be some other things I can do. So I started getting into that and more and noticed some improvements in my skin. It wasn't quite enough. Then when I was 19, I was diagnosed with PCOS. So
Okay.
it meant that, for those who don't know what that is, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And you do have it for life, so managing it and reducing different symptoms is really, really important because it messes up your hormones. It definitely affected my acne and affected different areas of my life. So having to live with that, I needed to find the changes and the help that I could to actually bring back my quality of life, both for my skin and just for living with PCOS.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you were trying to figure all this out, did your doctors ever connect the dots themselves about the PCOS and your acne? Like, was that ever mentioned to you that they could be connected?
No. By the time I was 19, when I was diagnosed with PCOS, I had stopped going to doctors, but I'm sure there were signs before that they could have connected. My sister had it first, so because she had had it for a couple of years and doctors didn't even know what it was, she was on meds, made it worse. Then she finally found out what it was and is like, oh, this is hereditary, so you could get this. I'm like, oh, joy. Then it was the summer of my 19th year that things just kind of, I guess all my symptoms kind of went downhill and appeared. So what was lingering there finally just showed up. And so then we found out, okay, you really do have it. But of course, any conventional advice they were going to give, I didn't want on that part, because my sister had been through all of the ropes. She could tell me exactly what they were going to suggest, and it was all an idea. It wasn't, this will really help you. And considering it made her symptoms worse, I'm like, there's no way. So it was even more important to work on the nutritional aspect from that point.
Yeah, you kind of got a glimpse of what the future could be watching your sister go through all of that yourself. Cool. So you've mentioned that you didn't want to do some of the conventional treatments. For anyone listening who's not familiar with those, do you want to explain kind of what some of the common side effects are that you were trying to avoid?
For acne or for PCOS?
Probably for acne, or for both, really.
Well, for acne, the common side effects I suffered was it dried out, dehydrated skin, because of the topical was kind of like this really dry, strong thing. Peeling, and, you know, on the package, they're like, when you're wearing this, don't go out in the sun. Granted, they should have said all the other times put on a ton of sunscreen, because it's increasing photosensitivity because of these harsh things, these harsh chemicals. So actually you're putting yourself at the risk of other skin issues and prolonged exposure, probably more risk of skin cancer, because it says don't go out in the sun. Of course, I should never have been out in the sun with that on. But then, of course, birth control, I wasn't on it for very long, but anybody who's been on birth control for a long time know that there's side effects, and it really suppresses the hormones rather than supports healthy ones. The minocycline, I don't think I saw symptoms at the time that I was using it, but because it was an antibiotic, I later learned that it negatively affects digestion, and later I definitely learned about issues with my digestion that I had to work on. So some of those side effects you didn't see right away, but they would have occurred later on. As for Accutane, I didn't go on it personally, but I'd heard too many horror stories about between peeling skin, burning sometimes, or even just the fact that it's so strong you have to do blood tests every couple months to make sure it's not damaging your body. And the final thing I thought was the most frightening was you get advice of this could give you suicidal thoughts, which happened to a lady I am acquainted with. So she quit it. And the thought that something given to help my skin could give me potential suicidal thoughts is the exact opposite to how health should work. Something that's benefiting your health should be making you feel better, not worse. So the range of symptoms I experienced kind of told me this was the wrong path.
Yeah, it sounds like nothing was really working, and it was all just sort of trying to put Band-Aids. None of those even working.
Not at all.
Yeah, and Accutane, I know that's a last resort for a lot of women. They've tried everything else, and you know that's the last thing that their doctors say. Well, we could try Accutane. I get the sense that a lot of people aren't aware of some of those side effects. Would you agree with that? Because you've probably seen in your practice some people who have tried it before or are thinking about it. And at least I get the impression that people are really not aware of some of those potential side effects.
I think some people are, but they're so into the, well, drugs are my only option, so I have to do this as my final straw, because from their perspective, they've been doing it for years. I believe one of my clients who had cystic acne, PCOS, and was a smoker, which really doesn't help your skin. I believe she had gone on Accutane previously and didn't experience as horrible side effects, but it didn't work. Some people have been on 2 rounds and it still doesn't work. At that point, you wonder, what has it done to the body by this point? And only it feels sad for the person because they're then looking for something else. Because of course, there's always the idea of, you have to fix this. Well, I have to find something else that can fix it. This has to be stronger, or maybe there's another med I can try. It's always it's kind of like putting something in a slot machine and pulling down the lever and hoping for jackpot. And when you don't get it, somebody else beside you did, but you're still going for it because that's your only option, because otherwise you have to be living with this. So That's kind of
Right.
the reality I see a lot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I definitely get the frustration that women go through because, you know, and I went through terrible acne and I still get it sometimes. It's right on your face. It's the first thing that you see when you look in the mirror. It's the first thing other people see. And so I definitely get the motivation to really want to resolve that. So when you started looking at nutrition, do you want to tell us a little bit about the link between nutrition and skin health?
Sure. Give me one second. So kind of the link between nutrition and skin health would be how it affects you internally. So for example, a lot of people aren't aware of food sensitivities. They may know a bit about, you know, maybe I shouldn't eat these foods, or they don't even know what healthy means. So if you're eating processed and refined foods, your body's going to constantly be dealing with that. Can't detox from it, and it's affecting the skin. It's not getting the nutrition it needs, and you know, you're putting in these refined ingredients. How's your body going to react? But even after, there's a variety of food sensitivity triggers that people might not know about or not know that they're experiencing. So they might cut out certain foods and be like, why am I still experiencing this? So nutrition has a lot to do with the food, but further than that, it has to do with kind of the internal body systems, because like I mentioned with digestion, if you have cleaned up your diet and your digestion still has issues, then it's going to show up in your skin. Between dysbiosis, leaky gut, H. pylori, or even just irregular dysfunction. There's also other systems of the body that are going to be affected if they aren't getting this proper nutrition and support, which especially if you take soil depletion, if you're trying to consume certain vegetables and other nutrients, you're not going to be getting everything you need, especially if you've been living a life with processed and standard North American diet foods. Your body's saying, I still don't have what I need. It's like a machine. You put in what you need and then it have the outcome, but it's a complex one and everybody's different. That's why it can't be a one size fits all. I try this food, I try that food, that didn't work. Oh, nutrition doesn't work, I'll go back to drugs.
This reminds me of an article that you have up on your website. I think it was called something about why clean eating didn't cure your breakouts. That was first of all, that's a great title because so many people do go through that. I've even heard from clients, you know, I tried the Whole30 and it didn't work. And so now they're trying something else. Do you want to delve a little bit more into that idea that, you know, sometimes simple diet changes aren't the whole picture?
Sure. I think the thing with people is they believe the results will be so fast that they can do it within 30 days. And genuinely, people usually experience improvements, you know, mental clarity, better energy, all this stuff because they're cleaning this junk out of their diet. But the body's still kind of like, hey, I'm not getting certain of this. You could have a Whole30 and yet not be getting enough of certain fat soluble nutrients like the A, D, E, and K. And you could not be getting the vitamin C, omega-3, zinc. And there's other things too, because all of our lifestyle factors affect people. So consider me with PCOS. Because of my hereditary condition, there are going to be certain nutrients that my body is going to be more deficient in other than somebody else who doesn't have PCOS. So people just think if you try it once, it should work out for everybody, but they don't understand the body's still struggling and you have to give it the support that it needs. Otherwise, it's just going to continue breaking out.
Is that what you find in your practice, that people come to you with skin issues and then what you end up really working on is the internal issues?
Oh yeah, the last lady I worked with had a pretty good diet. We only made some tweaks, but she was still breaking out. There was definite major hormonal imbalance and blood sugar issues, blood sugar imbalance, which is common with people, especially with her conditions. So she'd be hungry, starving at one point of the day. So we worked at regulating blood sugar, about hormones, about some of the fat soluble vitamins that she wasn't getting, and some of the other minerals so that her body was healing. But even then, she still wasn't digesting some of the things properly. So if you aren't digesting properly, it's not going to get to your skin. So over time, she's commenting that, hey, I see these improvements. My skin is healing up faster. I'm not getting as many of these breakouts and they're not as big and I feel better this, I feel better that. And hey, I'm not all of a sudden starving at this point of the day. So really, she already had a great diet, but it wasn't enough. She had to work on these other factors that were individual just to her. And a lot of people who have these skin issues will say, oh, I think it's from hormonal imbalance. I'll try this, I'll try that. They don't know what it means to get healthy hormones and what the other factors surrounding it is. So they don't even understand. They blame it on hormones, but they don't know how to help get back to balance in the first place.
Yeah, that's something that I hear a lot since I work with women on painful periods and things like that. Hormonal acne is a topic that comes up a lot. Do you want to talk a little bit more? Like, do you have different recommendations that you would work on with someone who seems to have hormonal acne versus someone with a different cause? Or are they really just the same issue?
I think it's working on the underlying issue as it is. One of my clients did have painful periods, and I think there's many underlying factors. You have to work on the hormones all throughout the month, because once you get to the period, it just kind of all shows up. If you've had imbalanced hormones, if you've had other factors affecting it, it's going to kind of make it worse. I definitely think that some of conventional women's products, conventional pads, all the stuff sprayed on it, and the weed and bleach and whatever, when they're next to that sensitive area, a variety of women have said since switching to organic whole cotton, that has improved their symptoms. So that can definitely be part of it. But as for the whole month thing, I think with the acne, it can get even worse, not just because of the things the body is going through, the fluctuations, but because of what people usually eat around there. So around a woman's period, it's common to have cravings because the body needs more of certain nutrients. And I've experienced this. If you crave chocolate, I go for high magnesium foods. Whereas, on the Pinterest, there's all these little jokes by women. It's like, oh, that time of the month, and it's usually shown as they'll have a cookie in one hand and a weapon in the other. This is how I feel. I need the sugar, the endorphins, and then I need this because I feel so much PMS. Or they'll be like, oh, I wear chocolate is in the aisle where the pads are. Somebody who did this is genius. But really, they're missing the whole point. The chocolate isn't really what you need. You could be having sugar cravings or magnesium, and you need to feed your body what that is. Also, a lot of women are more hungry. That's another sign of your body needs extra nutrients. So if people don't understand how to read the cravings, they're going to be eating more refined sugar and making their skin break out even worse. But yeah, throughout the rest of the month, they're working on the balancing of the hormones and things like vitamin C, calcium and its cofactors. Those types of things will really help when they hit the period. Is like, hey, I feel better this month. There's a noticeable change and improvement over time.
Yeah, and I think that can be surprising for some people because we don't often look at our issues as being connected like that. We think about, oh, I have acne, and then separately I have PMS, and then separately I have some digestive problems. And so the way you're putting all these puzzle pieces together for women is like, well, actually, it's all connected. It's all just your body needing support and needing nutrients. That's so cool. So I know we've talked about a couple of times so far some specific nutrients. Do you want to go through really quickly for anyone watching what maybe the top 2 or 3 nutrients are to support the skin? And if you know any like foods off the top of your head that I know I have a database for that stuff. I don't just know all of it, so I don't want to put you on the spot. But if you have a couple of nutrients you can throw out there that people can kind of start paying attention to in their diet.
I definitely think that vitamin C can be a big one. And people are always like, oh, vitamin C, this is so great. Immune system, blah, 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 cold season. And then they might just randomly take drugstore vitamin C. And it's like, you need a whole food form of vitamin C. There's a couple of supplements who are good enough that they have the whole form that encompassing. But more of like a dietary food form is best. Once again, soil depletion, unless you're eating a ton of vitamin C rich foods every day, you're going to have a little harder time getting it. So there's like high vitamin C teas, like rosehip, and then there's, of course, camu and acerola berry. Those are like superfoods that are way high in vitamin C. So you can add some of those. But the other ones people just aren't commonly aware of are the fat-soluble vitamins. They hear about, oh, omega-3s is great, and omega-3s are great, especially because people don't understand how many omega-6s they're consuming when they have all these processed foods and all these grains, and you're having your omega-6s up here and your omega-3s down here. So, of course, cod liver oil is something I like because it also contains vitamin A. Grass-fed liver is because of all the fat-soluble vitamins, but for some people, it can be harder to get enough of the vitamins A, D, E, and K. So if they were ever to be given the wrong advice and just go and get the one vitamin at, once again, the drugstore, they're not getting a quality one, most likely, and they're not getting the cofactors that are needed for supporting it. And those fat-soluble vitamins really do improve the effect of the skin. And the last one that is so common because it's hugely important for healing is zinc. So if you have cuts that are healing slow, or if you have skin wounds that are healing slow, when you up your zinc, dietary, it kind of works, but you have a harder time getting enough. So usually a supplement or a quality one, then you start to see kind of an improvement if you've had some of those issues. I heal faster, and zinc has too many factors in the body. It does too many things for me to be able to list all of them, but that's kind of the most common one if you think skin.
Yeah, you're right, and it does do a lot. All of those nutrients. So for someone who is listening and still struggling with acne, what are some kind of just lifestyle? We've talked quite a bit about dietary and nutrients, and we'll kind of put some of these in the comments for people to reference after the video as well. But do you have any kind of tips for people to get started with this? If this is brand new information for them, where can people get started kind of learning about how to support their skin a little bit better?
I think that learning the difference between conventional health food ideas and real health is a big one. You don't have to be paleo or vegetarian or any of this, but if you see products in the store that brand themselves as healthy and they're in a package, usually not things. So I recommend that, especially because a lot of people have a hard time cutting cold turkey, is you start weeding out the fast foods and the processed foods. Now, a lot of people say, oh, I tried to go off sugar, and, that didn't work. Well, unfortunately, there's sugar in just about everything of the processed foods. And even if there isn't listed sugar, it's probably in another form because there's how many names of sugar. And lastly, if it's a processed food, your body's still going to be affected by it. So weeding it out, you will notice how you feel, better symptoms, like I mentioned, some clarity, more energy. And then you're introducing more of certain foods. So people are always like, vegetables are a little harder to eat, but I know they're good for me. But it's not just vegetables. Do they understand that their conventional dairy products can cause a lot of people to break out? I look for more grass-fed products, but that's not always accessible to people. But the main problem with conventional dairy products is not just because of the hormones that the cows are fed, but also because, it has sugar. So, oh, gee, well, that has this and that has that additive. So, poof, there goes most of many people's dietary staples. You open up a yogurt, it has sugar in it, or it has this artificial thing added to it. So I think the dietary changes are going to be something that we're going to be focusing on. Also, this is what healthy means. This is what real food means. And here's some more fat-soluble vitamins in my diet through quality cheeses or animal fats, grass-fed ones. Like I said, I love cod liver oil and grass-fed liver. That may gross people out. I'm sorry.
It takes some getting used to. Yeah.
Barbecue and it changes the whole texture. But really, if they're having a hard time getting enough fat-soluble vitamins, that's kind of where quality supplements come into, liquid ones that contain all the cofactors. So to avoid overwhelming people, I always choose to focus on dietary, then supplementing in more nutrients, and then say working on digestion, which some people go and take a probiotic and wonder, why isn't this enough? It could be other things, other imbalances. You could need more digestive enzymes to help for a little while as you work on your digestion and take them with meals. You could have imbalances, floral imbalances. So digestion is kind of the next big step after you're working on these dietary changes.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if you aren't, digesting or absorbing the nutrients that you're working so hard to get, then your body can't use them. So that's a good one to point out for people, because I think, and when I was struggling with acne in high school, I had no idea it was related to my digestion. And I was also having like a lot of digestive distress. And it never occurred to me that those two things were related until, many years later when I started learning about this. So I'm glad you pointed that out. And I'm glad that you brought up dairy, because a lot of people wonder about dairy when it comes to their acne. Do you find that dairy is a problem for most people with skin issues, or is it more a matter of like the quality of dairy or the other cofactors going on internally?
Usually I work at removing some of the common things that people are most sensitive to, and wheat has become huge, probably because of lack of traditional processing with sprouting or pre-soaking the grains, and the extra gluten that's in everything, the things that have been sprayed on the crop. So many people are gluten sensitive, and they remove it, especially if they're working on their digestive health. It seems to be a big stressor. But once I've been working on people of the whole changing the dietary, I do point them to, okay, only choose, if you're going to do conventional dairy products, only choose the full fat ones and look at the package, avoid any additional additives, avoid any coloring, and avoid any sugar. So just kind of the opposite of what you're often trained of the low fat dairy products. Avoid those. They have had the fat removed and sugar has been put in their place because they taste horrible if they didn't have the fat. So really you're just exchanging one problem for an additional problem. Some people still can't tolerate conventional dairy, especially depending on how many stuff has been added into it. But once they try grass-fed dairy, sometimes like, whoa, that was so different, and I don't have any of these symptoms. So of the people I've worked with, a lot don't have problems with the higher fat conventional dairy because it doesn't have all those other things added. But some still just can't tolerate it without breaking out. So it depends on the individual. And I kind of take that as a final step later on, rather than having people remove all these foods. They don't even know which ones are they're sensitive to. They could be removing a good, healthy dairy product and not even be reacting to it, and which makes them feel more deprived, which is another thing. If people try the short health thing, they go onto all these ideas and remove all these foods. They don't see results. They're like, I'm deprived. This didn't work anyways. I'll go back to my old lifestyle, and they just don't understand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So as we kind of wrap up this conversation, I had a question that I added to the end of our interview that I sent you earlier. So Halloween is coming up. We've talked about sugar being a big issue with skin health. So I wanted to see if you have a recommendation for people as we're all kind of starting to think about, Halloween is coming up. Are we going to send our kids trick-or-treating? Are we not? What are we going to do about the bowls of candy at work? Do you have some advice or some tips for people who are, because people are motivated to improve their skin? I know I certainly was. It's right on your face. You want to deal with that. And so if you know sugar is a problem, what are some ways that people can reduce that sugar intake, but still kind of, enjoy the Halloween season and be in the spirit of things?
What I've noticed and experienced the most is that people can be, the word is social eater. So if you're around people and the candy, for me, conventional candy tastes, it has this chemically taste. A lot of, hey, you got this mass-produced, who knows what put in there, probably corn syrup. They're sending out boxes to all of these millions of people. It's not like a nice food anyways. And people are more of eating it, A, because it's there, and B, because it probably gives them an energy or endorphin boost, which healthy food could give them, and work on nutrition elsewise. And then because everybody else is doing it. So if you have kind of friends over, I think that the Halloween can be really thing for getting together with people. A lot of people have house parties, but instead of making all these refined treats and having these bowls of excess sugar, why not have other things? There can be unconventional ways to use vegetables to make the little ghost or this figure and all these other ideas. But I definitely think that having 2 or 3 kind of desserts, I'll call them, made with non-refined ingredients, kind of like honey and other flours or whatever. Flourless chocolate cake is my favorite. It has a lot of butter. It has a lot of chocolate. More of I use raw cocoa powder and heavy cream, honey, and it's a really, really rich dessert. So if you have a really, really rich dessert, then people are going to enjoy it more and have less of a desire for the sweet. So I think it's kind of shifting the mindset of instead of just grabbing candy off the shelf, is how can we make this a community thing? So we make some things that are dessert, yes, but they don't have the refined ingredients and they taste really good. You still have the experience of Halloween. It's a fun celebration. Everybody's enjoying it. You know, people don't have to know that it was made without real refined sugar, and everybody's having a good time because they came here to play games and to hang out. They didn't come here just to see how much more candy they could eat, you know?
That's a great point. Yeah.
That's kind of the switch, to see it as a family thing to get together instead of just, I wonder how much more candy I can fit in a huge bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are throwing a party or getting together with family and friends, that really is what it's about, you know, and dress up, have fun, play some games. And it's great that you pointed out, you do not have to forewarn your family that it is a sugarless, flourless cake. Just give them the cake. You don't have to preface it. And most of the time they'll eat that cake and it'll be delicious. They don't.
Oh yeah, they won't know the difference. They'll just be like, oh, it's chocolate cake. Man, this tastes awesome. It's so rich. And we have no clue.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that to be probably the biggest tip when I was trying to transition our family into just healthy eating in general many years ago, just trying to start eating more vegetables, I just didn't say what it was. I just gave them a plate of food and we just ate the plate of food, and there was no discussion about, well, I didn't want to put in, you know, the wheat or the gluten, and apologizing for that. You just feed some people some food and you don't have to make a big deal out of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for this interview. This has been fantastic information. I think that a lot of people probably learned a few things about the link between their skin and their overall health that they didn't know before. I know I didn't know a lot of that until I started learning about this. Do you have any final takeaways that you want to reiterate, just really make sure the people watching understood before we go?
I think my only final takeaways would be to give yourself time and to see yourself as the main point as different. Like I mentioned about my hereditary condition, PCOS, being different than other people, you are going to have different needs than somebody else beside you. So if you're trying to see, oh, well, they're healing faster and apparently they're working with nutritionists, or they've done this and look at their skin's great, or you can't compare yourself to other people, especially because some people have really bad lifestyles as in regards to health and many problematic symptoms, yet they have clear skin. It makes no sense, but it happens. So there's other people that seem to be trying to do everything right, and there's still all these internal issues, and they don't have clear skin. So really to look at yourself as you've spent all this time and all this money on all of these conventional treatments and trying this one thing and that one thing and all these quick fixes. Really, shouldn't you give yourself the time to heal? Because your body has the power to heal within itself if you give it the right support, rather than conventional ideas of your body has an issue, you have to fix it, like taking a wrench in there and just cranking something the right way. That's not how your body works. I definitely think that all of the processed food, the standard North American diet, the lack of focus on digestion, different things that affect our health are the reasons that there's so many skin issues these days. Whereas when my parents would talk about their high school, there was very little acne, and definitely not cystic acne, and definitely not tons more meds to try and cure it. So really give your time, your body the time and the forgiveness to heal.
Fantastic. So if people want to connect with you, where can they find you? Are you on Facebook, Instagram? Where can people?
I'm on Facebook, and we could probably link my website here. I have a contact page if they want to talk with me, work with me, you can always just send questions to me via Facebook. That works as well.
Awesome. And we will link to Priscilla's Facebook in the comments and in the body of this post. I'll go ahead and add that in afterwards so that you all can connect with Priscilla and learn more from her amazing wisdom in regards to skin health.
Okay, this is great, Molly. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
You too, eh?